allows them to stay in their communities. It is also designed to develop empathy amongst offenders. It requires approval from the court as well as permission from the victim. The offender must agree to take responsibility for the actions, and they have to participate fully in the mediation. For youth, research shows that restorative justice can improve outcomes in many ways. First, it's linked to lower recidivism, and also, secondly, increased relationship building skills and improved communication skills. The program we're talking about today started in 2020, and it was based off a very effective program in the largest metro area in our state, Louisville. A state senator that was from the eastern part of the state was interested in replicating what was going on in Louisville, and so reached out to the nonprofit program that was doing the restorative justice in Louisville. They got a grant, and then after they established that grant and were ready to start, they came to Eastern Kentucky University and asked if we wanted to be involved in the evaluation of the program. It's aimed at increasing options, particularly diversion options, for youth who are in the rural parts of the state. Staff are trained by the Volunteers of America nonprofit that works out of Louisville because they've been doing it for a while, and then staff members work in each of the counties that are involved in the program. And as you can see by the graphic here, we're in the counties that are in the most southeastern part of the state.
So our evaluation methods were developed with the Volunteers of America staff, trying not to ask them to collect more data than they needed to, but really making sure we had the pieces of data that would help us determine if this program was being effective for the group of youth, what they were trying to work with. So we look at the referral counts, and we compare those that went into the juvenile justice system with those that actually got referred into the restorative justice program. And we look at what their charges were when they were arrested. And we also look at some of their behavioral health indicators. What are some of the other issues going on for that youth? I don't know if you're familiar with the GAIN, which is called the Global Assessment of Individual Needs. It's a pretty long assessment. We use the short screener version just to get an indicator of issues. And if they have issues, then the program staff direct them to further assessment and resources. So those are not actually given through the restorative justice program, but they direct them to support. We also collect satisfaction surveys. The adults that are there helping the youth through the conference, as well as the youth, the victims, and the offenders, all are to complete the satisfaction surveys. And then we've started doing follow-up satisfaction, and that's about 6 to 12 months after the group has completed a conference. We do paper mail, do email, survey links to an online version. As you know, follow-ups are really hard. So that's something we're really still trying to grow. And recidivism data is also something we'd really like to look at. After they complete the program, we want to know, are they continuing to have problems in the court system? Because of our small sample size, and I'll talk more about why that is, we think we are not able to look at recidivism data yet. But once our sample grows, we hope to gather that information. So here's some of the results from our first period of evaluation. We collected data from August 2020 to July 31st of this year. And over that period, we had 34 youth that completed the restorative justice conferences. And if you look in the table on the right there, you can see what their gender identity, their race, and their ages, their breakdown is there. This really mirrors the southeastern Kentucky demographic. If you look at census data, it's very heavily white and very more cisgender than some of the other areas in the region. So the youth mirror that pretty well. The ages of the youth so far, about half of them are 16 to 17, and then the other half are between that larger 11 to 15 age range. Let's see. And then if you compare that bottom little chart, we're looking at the urban area, which this small program is modeled on. And the percentage of youth that are sent to the juvenile court as opposed to the youth that are referred into the restorative justice program is actually higher within the rural area, which is exciting. And we are looking at that as an indicator that hopefully the numbers will pick up and we'll get more youth involved in the program over time. A couple of our evaluation results. So looking at the charges. So why did these kids get involved in this program? Why did they need restorative justice? Over half of the youth had multiple charges. So not just one thing, but multiple issues that the courts were identifying. About half of them were assault, some physical assault issue. 32.4%, it was harassment. And then 23.5% criminal mischief. So those are kind of the big charges that seem to be getting kids involved. And to be in this program, you cannot have a sexual crime, a really extremely violent crime, and it usually is their first or second encounter with the juvenile justice system. So we're trying to catch them early and change the behavior right away. Their GAIN scores, that's the one I talked about, the behavioral health scores. Over half of them had a high indicator of some other clinical diagnostic criteria, and 26.5% of them had a moderate likelihood. So the majority of the kids we know have some kind of behavioral health issue, probably mental health concerns that needed to be addressed. So they were all referred for other services. When we asked about satisfaction over pretty much the whole group, both offenders and victims said that they understood what was occurring during the conference, which is really important, right? If we want kids to get what's going on and to make some changes, they're saying that they understand the process. So that's really positive. They also felt really good about getting to share their perspective. Particularly the victims felt like they got a chance to say, here's why this hurt me. Here's why this was why we needed to come talk about this. And it helped the offender understand, oh, that's why that's how my actions impact somebody. They also both felt like they were treated with respect, which is a big part of these conferences too. So far within the follow-up surveys, we just have a couple of those, but all of them talked about closure with the incident, that this was something, because they did that restorative justice conference 6 to 12 months ago, they still felt like that really brought closure to what happened and that amends were made. There was something that came out of this that was really positive. Let's see, is this one monitoring? Yeah. So a couple of the challenges. We only have 34 youth in this time period. We know we want more, right? We ran into some pretty major challenges right away. COVID has affected everybody, right? And in the rural regions, we know from a lot of other data that they're hit a lot harder by this. A lot of reasons for that, but it impacted this program particularly because as things switched to virtual options, we were not able to have virtual court sessions. We were not able to have virtual school in much of this area because limited access to internet. In fact, about a third of individuals in this region do not even have internet in their homes because it's not wired out into these rural areas. So that was a big barrier. And then geography. I don't know if you're familiar with Appalachia or Eastern Kentucky. The geography literally is its own barrier sometimes because there's 2-lane roads and they're windy. Things are built down into valleys. And it's really challenging to get from one county to another. They may be on the map right next to each other, but it takes about an hour to get from this county courthouse to this other one over here. And that can be a real barrier, as well as it also creates an insulation around some of these communities. So if you look at rural community culture, one of the things that individuals typically find in research is that rural culture is that we take care of our own. We don't want those outside people coming in telling us what to do. So our restorative justice program is coming in from outside and is looked at rather suspiciously. So rather than being able to just jump right in and get people involved and get them excited, it's going to take a lot more time than we expected. The big part of that is going to be helping people understand, here's some success stories from people in your community. We're going to have to build some of those. So Stephanie will talk more about that part as well.
Yeah, so there is really not, like Erin said, the relationships and the trust is a really big piece of people choosing to participate in restorative justice, particularly victims. So there's not a great deal of current literature about restorative justice in rural areas outside of school-based intervention. So there's restorative justice programs that can happen within the school. But looking a little bit bigger, there's just not a lot of current information out there. So some questions for further consideration in this project are looking at the relationship of residents with the police departments in the counties. The first point of contact for both the victim and the offender is usually a police officer. And this can really impact the attitudes of both the offender and the victim. In addition, the police officer often has a great deal of discretion about what is going to happen. And this can directly impact what the next step is in terms of whether the youth is going to be arrested or whether it's going to move toward adjudication. That kind of sets the stage for the victim's attitude as well. Another question is general attitudes about crime and punishment. So lower education and lower income have been linked to a desire to see more punitive responses to crime. This is really important in southeastern Kentucky because this area has a high population of residents that have less than a college education. And there's also a high percentage of people that are living below the poverty rate or below the poverty line. So going forward, we're going to be interested to see if the rates of participation and successful completion increase as communities become more knowledgeable about what restorative justice is, or other ways that, like Erin said, we can really communicate the potential positive aspects of having these restorative justice programs in their community. It can also give us some information about how to improve relationships between police departments and the community. So this has been a really quick snapshot. And again, I want to apologize for us getting in here late, but the outcomes, although we have definitely been impacted by COVID, the outcomes so far have been really positive. What we find is that the people that did participate were really excited about the results and really felt like they were meaningful. For the offenders, that part about being heard is really important, and that is directly linked to reducing recidivism, right? And getting these youthful offenders out of this stage where they're committing crimes, moving on to being able to be functioning members of their society, right? We know that victims also can feel real healing. Victims being heard is a big part of what restorative justice is, and we were glad to see, even in our small number, that those outcomes were happening.
Mm-hmm. And that is all we have for the moment here. I had one question for you all, and we may not have time to answer it, but I'm curious if any of you use restorative justice or know of those types of programs in your area similar to what we were talking about. Yeah.